All right, we are live with another English class today, and we are going to explore and practice some vocabulary and interesting words from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I selected these words myself. They're mostly intermediate and advanced words. I forgot to put on my music. We'll put some nice music in the background. There we go. Okay. So let's start with the first word that I've chosen from Charles Dickens' David Copperfield, and that is to ascertain. And to ascertain is an advanced vocabulary word. It means to find out or to discover, to try to find the answer to a question. Let's see, where's my exercise? If I say they fixed the problem, but they never discovered the cause. They fixed the problem, but they never discovered the cause. How would you use ascertain here? Can you change it? They fixed the problem, but they never ascertained the cause. They fixed the problem, but they never ascertained the cause. Because ascertain means discover, find out, find the answer to a question. Let's take this sentence, they never ascertained the cause, and make it passive voice. How would you make that passive voice? They never ascertained the cause. The cause was never ascertained. The cause was never ascertained. The cause was never discovered. Let's make a why not question with that sentence. Why not? Why wasn't? Why wasn't the cause? Why wasn't the cause ascertained? Why wasn't the cause ascertained? Here's the reason. Because the problem was hidden. Because the problem was hidden. The cause was never ascertained. The cause was never ascertained because the problem was hidden. The cause was never ascertained because the problem was hidden. Here's another sentence. The sales manager needed to find out the reason for the slump in sales. Slump is if you're looking at a graph and it goes down suddenly, that's a slump. So a slump in sales is a very slow period in sales. The sales manager needed to find out the reason for the slump in sales. Where would you put ascertain? What could we use to substitute ascertain in this sentence? The sales manager needed to ascertain the reason for the slump in sales. The sales manager needed to ascertain the reason for the slump in sales. Let's make this passive voice. The slump in sales needed. The slump in sales needed to be. The slump in sales needed to be ascertained. The slump in sales needed to be ascertained. How would you make a when question with that sentence? When? When did the slump? When did the slump in sales? When did the slump in sales need to be? When did the slump in sales need to be ascertained? It's very fancy English. When did the slump in sales need to be ascertained? And here is the answer. Before the next quarter. Before the next quarter. The slump in sales needed The slump in sales needed to be ascertained before the next quarter. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to a new word. This is actually an expression. It's kind of interesting. For good. This expression, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but we use it to mean forever. So when you see this at the end of a sentence, blah, 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 for good, that means forever. So that's kind of interesting. That's not something that you see in an English book, usually, using the phrase for good, meaning something is permanent, something is forever. Let's look at some examples of how to use this. If we say, John smokes cigarettes and he has tried quitting many, many times, but he always returns to smoking. And then his doctor warns him that if he doesn't stop now, he will become very sick. This scares him, so he decides to quit forever, to quit permanently. No more fake quitting. He's quitting for good. He's quitting for good. He's quitting forever. He's permanently quitting. So we've got the sentence, he quit for good. He quit for good. That quit is in the past. He quit for good. Let's make a how question with that sentence. How? How did he? How did he? How did he quit for good? How did he quit for good? And we'll answer this question using by plus ing. So the preposition by plus ing. And we will say, he quit for good by focusing. He quit for good by focusing on hobbies. He quit for good by focusing on hobbies. Let's try another example. Let's see. Mary has a boyfriend. They have a difficult relationship, and sometimes they fight and then they break up. They separate. But eventually, they decide to continue their relationship. This happens many, many times. It's a very dramatic type of relationship. But one time, Mary became very angry with her boyfriend. And she never wanted to see him again. In other words, they broke up permanently, forever. They broke up for good. No more chances. Mary is finished forever. They broke up for good. They broke up for good. Let's make a when question. When? When did they? When did they break up? When did they break up for good? When did they break up for good? Let's say after their last fight. They broke up for good after their last fight. They broke up forever, permanently. No more chances. They broke up for good after their last fight. All right, let's move on to another vocabulary word from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield. I think I've actually done a video with this phrase before, but it's worth practicing many times. So here it is again, and that's it's no use. It is no use. And you use this phrase, it's no use, when you want to say there's no point in doing something. Your actions will not get the results that you want to achieve. You won't achieve your goal, so don't do the action. Let's try an example to see. Mark's old computer was broken. Mark tried to fix it, but it was a waste of time. There was no way to fix that old computer. He tried to fix his old computer, but it was no use. There's no reason to try. Don't try. Don't even try. There's no reason to try. It's not going to happen. Fixing it is pointless. It was no use trying to fix the computer. It was no use trying to fix the computer. Let's make a why question with it was no use trying to fix the computer. Why? Why was it? Why was it no use? Why was it no use trying? You know, that's a hard word for people to pronounce because if you listen to the middle, there are a lot of sounds. Trying. Trying. It was no use trying to fix the computer. It was no use trying to fix the computer. Why was it no use trying to fix the computer? Why was it no use trying to fix the computer? And here's the reason. The operating system is no longer supported. The operating system is no longer supported. It was no use trying to fix the computer because the operating system is no longer supported. Let's try another example. Here's another situation. John is trying to convince Mary to buy a new car, but she doesn't want a new car. It doesn't matter what John says. Mary will never buy a new car. John is wasting his time trying to convince her. He thinks she should buy a new car, but it's no use talking to her. It's no use. It's no use talking to her. It is a waste of time talking to her. She will never listen. It's no use talking to her. It's no use talking to her. She won't listen. Don't waste your time. It's no use talking to her. Let's change a few words around. Let's say talking to Bob and Lisa. It's no use talking to Bob and Lisa. Bob and Lisa. Bob and Lisa. It's no use talking to Bob and Lisa. Let's use the pronoun. What would be the pronoun for that? It's no use talking to them. It's no use talking to them. It's no use talking to them. Let's change another word. Let's say listening. It's no use listening to them. It's no use listening to them. Let's change something else. Let's say Mike. It's no use listening to Mike. What would be the pronoun to use there? It's no use listening to him. It's no use listening to him. It's no use listening to him. Okay, now here is another word from chapter 5 of David Copperfield, and that is the verb to squeeze. And actually here I've got a picture of squeeze, which is, you can see somebody is squeezing an orange. So squeeze is when you hold something very tightly in your hand. That is squeezing. So let's see. Now that we understand the word squeeze, let's look at an example. So here we have John squeezed some lemons to get some juice. Let's make a yes/no question with he squeezed a lemon, or he squeezed a lemon. He squeezed a lemon. He squeezed a lemon. Did he squeeze a lemon? Squeeze a lemon? Squeeze a lemon? Did he squeeze a lemon? Did he squeeze a lemon? And how would you answer no to that question? No, he did not. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't squeeze a. No, he didn't squeeze a. No, he didn't squeeze a lemon. No, he did not squeeze a lemon. No, he didn't squeeze a lemon. Let's make a what. What squeeze? What squeeze? What did he? What did he? What did he squeeze? What did he squeeze? He squeezed an orange. He squeezed an orange. Dan orange. Dan orange. He squeezed an orange. He squeezed an orange. No, he didn't squeeze a lemon. He squeezed an orange. No, he didn't squeeze a lemon. He squeezed an orange. Let's make a yes/no question with an orange. Did he squeeze an? Did he squeeze an orange? An orange? Squeeze an orange? Did he squeeze an orange? Did he squeeze an orange? Let's answer no. No, he did not squeeze an orange. Squeeze an orange. Didn't squeeze an orange. No, he didn't squeeze an orange. No, he didn't squeeze an orange. Okay, let's make a what squeeze question. What? What did he? What did he? What did he squeeze? What did he squeeze? What did he squeeze? He squeezed a grapefruit. He squeezed a grapefruit. Okay, he didn't squeeze an orange. He squeezed a grapefruit. All right. Let's move on to another word here. We have the word to cram. This is another vocabulary word from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And this verb to cram is an intermediate level vocabulary word. It's used when you try to put many things into a small space. That's a verb that means you try to put something big into something small, something too small. You can use it literally, physically, or you can use it abstractly. Let's try a couple of examples. Here's a situation. It was difficult to put 2 weeks of clothes into one bag. She had to use a lot of force. Mary had to use a lot of force. She crammed the bag with clothes. Too many clothes, small bag. She crammed the bag with clothes. Let's change a word. Instead of clothes, let's say books. She crammed a bag with books. She crammed a bag with books. What if we say the shelf instead of the bag? So she crammed the shelf with books. Now you can picture the shelf is this big and she's trying to fit too many books on the shelf. Too many books on the bookshelf. She crammed the shelf with books. Let's change another word. Let's say I. I crammed the shelf. I crammed the shelf with books. Let's use another word. Let's say box. I crammed the box. I crammed the box with books. Box with books. I crammed the box with books. Because crammed means trying to put a lot of something into a small space, we can use it more abstractly, like with time. So if we say that John had a big exam at school and he wasn't familiar with the material, so the night before the exam, he stayed up all night studying, and he tried to put a lot of studying into a small period of time, we can say he crammed for the exam. That's very common. Students use that word all the time for trying to study a lot in a very short period of time. We say that he crammed for the exam. He crammed for the exam. Let's make a when question. When did he cram? When did he cram for the exam? When did he cram for the exam? And here's the answer. The night before the test. The night before the test. He crammed for the exam. He crammed for the exam the night before the test. He crammed for the exam the night before the test. All right. So that's cram. Let's move on to another vocabulary word here, and that is the verb to gulp. And gulp is similar to swallow. It means going down the throat. But when I think of that word gulp, I think that it's either big or quick, or also the sound. That's gulping. That's the gulp sound. So it's like a strong swallow. It's like a desperate swallow. It's a very heavy swallow. Gulping down food. Okay, let's see. Here's an example. So Mary was hungry and she only had 5 minutes to eat. So she's very busy, she's running around, she's hungry. She only has 5 minutes to eat. So we can say Mary was hungry, so she gulped down a sandwich. And now suddenly I imagine it's very strong swallowing. Gulp, gulp, gulp. That's gulp. She gulped down a sandwich. That means she shoved it in her face very quickly. Let's change some words. Let's say a snack bar. She was hungry, so she gulped down a snack bar. That's like she didn't even chew it. It just went down her throat. She gulped down a snack bar. Let's say Let's change a couple more words. Let's say thirsty and some water. She was thirsty. She was thirsty, so she gulped down some water. She was thirsty, so she gulped down some water. Now let's say they. They were thirsty. They were thirsty, so they gulped down some water. Let's use he. He was thirsty, so he gulped down some water. Okay. Let's move on to another vocabulary word from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield, and that is the question, what will become of, and then something. And that's a way of saying, what is going to happen to this thing? So when you say what will become of, what you want to know is what is going to be the result? What is going to happen as a result of this thing? You usually use it when you're worried, when you're very worried about something like, oh, the world is crazy right now. What will become of the world? You're worried about the world and you want to know what is the future going to be like for the world? Very similar to what will happen. All right, let's see. Here's the situation. Mike just bought a new car and every month he has to make very large payments. But there's a very good possibility he will lose his job. Let's make a question with this idea. This is going to be an if question. If he gets fired, if he gets fired, what will become of? If he gets fired, what will become of his? What will become of his? If he gets fired, what'll become of his new car? If he gets fired, what will become of his new car? If he gets fired, what'll become of his new car? What'll become of his? What'll become of his? What'll become of his new car? If he gets fired, what'll become of his new car? And here's the answer. If he gets fired, if he gets fired, if he gets fired, if he gets fired, he will. If he gets fired, he'll. If he gets fired, he'll have to. If he gets fired, he will have to. If he gets fired, he'll have to. If he gets listen to this. This is funny. This is how people talk, though. If he gets fired, he will. So that we've got these three words. Fired, he will. Fired he, fire D. Fired he will, fire deal. Fire deal. If he gets fired, he'll have to sell it. That's what you want to hear probably is, if he gets fired, he will have to sell it. But that fired he will would be fire deal. If he gets fired, he'll have to sell it. That's very normal spoken English. Okay, let's try another situation. Mary has to find a new apartment. The new apartment will be much smaller. And now she has too much furniture. Let's make a question with this idea. When she moves, what'll become of? What'll become of her extra furniture? What'll become of her? What'll become of her? When she moves, what'll become of her extra furniture? When she moves, what'll become of her extra furniture? And here's the answer. She will give away, phrasal verb means give for free. She will give away her extra furniture. She will give away her extra furniture. She'll give away her extra furniture. When she moves, she'll give away her extra furniture. When she moves, she'll give away her extra furniture. All right, here is another vocabulary word from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and that is dexterity. And dexterity means very good with your hands, or maybe even body. I think physically. I mean, mostly I think it should be your hands if you're talking about being dexterous, but it could be, I guess, your whole body. So let's see how we use that in a sentence. Mary really admires John because of the skillful way He plays the piano. Okay. She admires him because he is dexterous with the piano. So you can have different skills if you're playing the piano. Maybe you play very beautiful music, but technically the moving of the fingers and the hands, that takes a lot of work. And if you say dexterous, you're only talking about the physical way, and that it's very good or very amazing. He is dexterous with the piano. Let's change a word. Let's say football. He is dexterous with a football. So that means he's very good at, I'm thinking of American football. I don't know. You're not supposed to touch the other kind of football, right? But you could still be dexterous playing non-American football. So let's see. She admires him because he is dexterous with a football. She admires him. She admires him. She admires him because he is, because he, because he is, because he's. She admires him because he's. She admires him because he's dexterous with a football. Very good with the body. Very good with the hands. Very skilled with the body or the hands. She admires him because he's dexterous with a football. So that's she admires him because he is dexterous with a football. She admires him because he's dexterous with a football. Okay. Let's change another word. Let's say looks up to. That's a phrasal verb that means admire. She looks up to him. She looks up to him because he is dexterous with a football. She looks up to him because he's dexterous with a football. Let's change another word. Let's say she looks up to him, or let's say he. He looks up to him because he's dexterous with a football. Okay, let's change another word. Let's say guitar. He looks up to him because he's dexterous with a guitar. Okay, and that means he's very good at moving. He's very good at moving the fingers. It's about the fingers. It's not about does he play music well. It's just amazing the way he can move his fingers or his body. Alrighty, here is our next vocabulary word from chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And that is to ruminate. That's a pretty advanced word, to ruminate. And it's a verb which means to think very deeply, consider something very carefully. And actually, it comes from the way cows chew grass. So cows chewing grass is very slow and careful. I don't know if you've ever seen a cow chewing grass, but that's ruminating. So if you're ruminating about something, you're chewing on it in your mouth. Good idea or bad idea, something like that. So you slowly digest it. It's a thinking carefully is how it's usually used. So let's use it in a sentence to see how it works. Lucy was unable to sleep, so she thought very deeply over the events of the day. She chewed on them. Chewing on the events of the day. Let's use ruminate. She ruminated, and we're going to use the preposition over. She ruminated over. Ruminated over. She ruminated over the events. She ruminated over the events of the day. She thought very carefully about it. Let's make a when question with that sentence. When did she ruminate? When did she ruminate over? So that's ruminate over, ruminate over, ruminate over. In North America, it sounds more like this, ruminate over, ruminate over. But it's either tover or dover. It's not over. When did she ruminate over? When did she ruminate over the events of the day? When did she ruminate over the events of the day? Here's the answer. When she couldn't sleep. When she couldn't sleep. She ruminated over the events of the day when she couldn't sleep. Let's try another example. After John received feedback from his boss, he began to think very deeply about how he could improve. So he chewed on it. He ruminated over it. He began to ruminate over how to improve. He began to ruminate over how to improve. Let's make a when question. When did he begin? When did he begin to ruminate on, or over, over. When did he begin to ruminate over? When did he begin to ruminate over how to improve? When did he begin to ruminate over how to improve? Over how to improve, over how to. That's how it sounds when people are talking. When did he begin to, instead of begin to, it sounds like begin to. When did he begin to ruminate over how to improve? When did he begin to ruminate over how to improve? And here's the answer. After his performance review. He began to ruminate over. He began to ruminate over how to. He began to ruminate over how to. He began to ruminate over how to improve after his performance review. After his performance review. He began to ruminate over how to improve after his performance review. All right, let's move on to the next vocabulary word, which is to catch wind of something. And that is when you hear news through people talking. The wind is the part of the words. So when you catch wind of something, it's because someone told you some information. It's like gossip or a rumor. It's really used quite a bit with gossip or rumor because the way you hear it is through people talking. And a lot of times when people are talking, they exaggerate or they change little details. It becomes a rumor. But it could be true. It just means you heard it from someone. To catch wind of something. Let's use it in a sentence to see how it works. How would you ask someone, have you heard about the new TV show? Okay. Now, if you ask it like that, have you heard about the new TV show? You're asking, I don't know what the means are for receiving the information. Maybe you saw it on a website, or maybe you saw it on the news. But if we use catch wind of, it sounds like, did someone tell you about it? Did one of your friends tell you about it? So instead of have you heard of, we can say, have you caught wind of the new television show? Have you caught wind of? Have you caught wind of? Have you caught wind of the? Have you caught wind of the new TV show? Have you caught wind of the new TV show? Have you caught wind of the? Have you caught wind of the? Have you caught wind of the new TV show? So asking it like that, it sounds like, did you hear about it from your friends? Whereas if you say, did you hear about the new TV show? Or have you heard about the new TV show? That could be anything. Did you see it on a website? Did you read about it in the news? It could be anything. But when you say, have you caught wind of, it almost sounds, not exactly, but it almost sounds like, did your friends tell you about the new TV show? Okay, let's see. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I'm just, because I've got all of these exercises prepared, but I'm half reading and half talking, so I've lost my place. Okay, so again, like if you ask someone, have you heard about the war? Have you heard about the war? If you ask it like that, it's almost like saying, are you watching the news? Or have you seen the newspaper? But if you want to make it sound like, have you been talking about this with your friends? then you could use catch wind of. How would you do that if the question is about the war? Have you caught wind of the? Have you caught wind of the? Have you caught wind of the war? Have you caught wind of the war? What if there is a crime in your neighborhood? A serious crime happened in your neighborhood, and you want to ask one of your neighbors, oh, did anyone tell you about this? So it's more not like, did you hear it on the news or did you read about it on the internet, but have you been talking with your friends about this? Did they tell you? You would say, have you? Have you caught wind of? Have you caught wind of the crime? Have you caught wind of the crime? What if Lisa got a promotion and you want to ask if you read the official email going around to everyone? Maybe you would say, did you hear the news? Or have you heard? Have you heard about Lisa's promotion? Have you heard about Lisa's promotion? But what if we want to ask more like, did anyone tell you? Like maybe it's not official. Maybe they haven't announced it yet. How would you say that to mean, how would you ask that question meaning, did your friends tell you about it? Did your coworkers tell you about it? Not, did you read the official email? Have you caught wind of? Have you caught wind of her promotion? Okay. All right, let's move on to another vocabulary word here, which is to muster. Okay, this is also from chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And this word to muster, it's a pretty advanced word, and it means to bring things together to make something bigger or stronger. So you're bringing things together from all parts to make it bigger or stronger. And usually, I'm just thinking of some examples here. We've got muster an army. Muster an army. That means you bring people together to form an army. One person is not very strong, but when you bring people together from many different parts, you muster an army. And actually, it's a kind of a military word. It's used a lot in the military. What do you think it means to muster courage? Maybe here you don't have enough courage, but maybe we can find courage from here, bring it all together, and then we've got all the courage we need. That would be mustering courage. Let's use it in some examples to see how it works. So let's say John wasn't making enough money at his job. So he looked for and found all of the courage inside of himself to ask for a pay raise. Okay, so when he first looked, he only found a little bit of courage, but he put all the courage together in his whole body and mind, and then he mustered the courage. He mustered the courage to ask for a raise. He mustered the courage to ask for a raise. He mustered the courage to ask for a raise. Let's say that John wants a date with Mary and change, let's say he wants a date with Mary and change the phrase with ask for a date. He mustered the courage to ask for a date. He mustered the courage to ask for a. He mustered the courage to ask for a. He mustered the courage to ask for a date. Let's change it again, and let's say favor. Favor. Ask for a. Ask for a. Ask for a favor. He mustered the courage to ask for a favor. He mustered the courage to ask for a favor. Let's say Mike was very weak and he couldn't leave his bed. That's how weak he was. But he looked for and found all of the strength that he had inside of himself, inside of his body. And he walked to the kitchen for food. But he had to take the strength from everywhere, from his heart, from his mind, from his body, and bring it together to find the strength to walk to the kitchen for some food. And we can say, he mustered. He mustered the strength to walk to the kitchen. That means he had to find it. It wasn't available right away. He had to bring it all together, and then he could do it. Let's change a word. Let's say call an ambulance. Poor John, he's very sick. Call an ambulance. Call an ambulance. Call an ambulance. He mustered the strength to call an ambulance. To call an ambulance. He mustered the strength to call an ambulance. Let's change that and say contact the doctor. He mustered the strength to contact the doctor. He mustered the strength to contact the doctor. All right, we've just got a few more words left and then we're finished. We've got, I think, 16 words. This is number 12. And that is to endeavor. And again, I think this is a pretty advanced word. And endeavor means to try. It's a fancy way of saying try. It's pretty common. It's not an uncommon word. And when you say endeavor instead of try, it's usually because the project is bigger or more difficult or more complicated than just try. So it's a harder word. Okay, so for example, if we say Mary tried to learn French, that sounds a little bit superficial. She didn't try very hard. But if we change it to endeavor, we can see that she was very serious about trying to learn French. So let's change it. We've got Mary tried to learn French. That's okay, but maybe some people will think, oh, she wasn't trying very hard if she only tried. It's very clear, though, if we change it to endeavor, that she was very serious and she tried very hard. Maybe she didn't succeed, but she tried her best. Mary endeavored to learn French. She endeavored to learn French. It was a big, serious project, and she tried very hard. Let's make a when question with Mary endeavored. When did she endeavor? When did she endeavor to learn? When did she endeavor to learn? Endeavor to, endeavor to. When did she endeavor to learn French? And here's the answer. Before she traveled to Paris. Before she traveled to Paris. She endeavored to learn French before she traveled to Paris. We can also use endeavor like a noun. So we can say learning French is a difficult endeavor, a difficult thing to try. Okay, let's try another example, which is John tried to convince Mary that he was right. If we decide to change the word try to endeavor, suddenly we understand that it's going to be extremely difficult to convince Mary. It sounds like a big project, a very serious, big project. Maybe she's very stubborn. She doesn't want to listen. Or maybe she hates John. Who knows? But suddenly we understand it's a much more difficult process if we use endeavor instead of try. So the original sentence is, he tried to convince her. He tried to convince her. Use endeavor instead. Let's change it. He endeavored to. He endeavored to convince her. Convince her. Convince her. Convince her. He endeavored to convince her. He endeavored to convince her. Let's make a how question. How? How did he? How did he? How did he endeavor? How did he endeavor to convince? How did he endeavor to convince her? How did he endeavor to convince her? How did he endeavor to convince her? Let's answer with the word by plus ing. By explaining. By explaining the problem. He endeavored to convince her. He endeavored to convince her. He endeavored to convince her by explaining the problem. He endeavored to convince her by explaining the problem. And we can also use endeavor as a noun here. Trying to convince her is not an easy endeavor. It's not a very easy thing to try. Trying to convince her is not an easy endeavor. All right, let's move on to our next vocabulary word. And actually, I tried to preload a picture for this, but surprisingly, I couldn't find one. And I want to show you what it means. So this word cramped, it's a very common word. And cramped is when you're talking about a small space. Like you can see this woman, this room is way too small for her. She can't move around. You use the word cramped when you want to, plain seats. Here's a plain seat. Plain seats are notoriously cramped. So you feel very uncomfortable because you can't move. Cramped is an adjective that means you can't move around. There's not enough space to move around. It's an uncomfortable place to be because you can't move around. Cramped. Okay. So again, this is another vocabulary word from chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And let's use it in an example. Mary is moving apartments. She's changing apartments. Now we can say she is moving. We can just say she is moving. I know in some languages you have to say changing apartments, changing houses, but we can just say she's moving and we understand the rest of it. So let's make a why question with the sentence, she is moving. She's moving. Why? Why is she? Why is she? Why is she moving? Why is she moving? The reason that she's moving is that her apartment is uncomfortably small. She doesn't have enough room to move comfortably. So we can say that her apartment is cramped. We can say her apartment is cramped. She's moving because her apartment is cramped. The opposite of cramped is spacious. So here's a sentence. Her apartment is spacious. Her apartment is spacious. How would you make a yes/no question with that sentence? Spacious means a lot of space. Is her apartment spacious? Is her apartment spacious? Let's say spacious, no, but cramped, yes. No, her apartment is not. No, her apartment's not. No, her apartment isn't. No, her apartment isn't spacious. No, her apartment's not spacious. It's cramped. No, her apartment isn't spacious. It's cramped. Okay, let's try another example. John doesn't like small cars. How would you make a why not question with that sentence? Why not? Why doesn't? Why doesn't he? Why doesn't he? Why doesn't he? Why doesn't he like small cars? Why doesn't he like small cars? Why doesn't he like small cars? And here's the answer. He's very tall. He's very tall. He doesn't like small cars because he's very tall. Because he's very tall. He doesn't like small cars because he's very tall. He doesn't like small cars because he's very tall. He finds them cramped. They're so small they make him feel uncomfortable. He finds small cars. He finds them cramped. He finds small cars cramped. He finds them cramped. He finds them cramped. He doesn't like small cars because he's very tall and he finds them cramped. All right. Now our next word, where are we here, is to coax, but this is the wrong spelling. So let me change this just a second. To coax. Okay. And I would say this is a Pretty advanced word. I mean, I guess it's probably considered intermediate, but I haven't ever seen that in an English book of any level, so that's kind of interesting. But it's a pretty common word. Again, this is a vocabulary word from chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And the verb to coax is similar to the verb convince or to persuade, but it's like a gentle, slow convincing, softer persuasion. So it's coax is like a soft convince. Let's use it in an example. Okay, so you imagine Lucy's cat is hiding under a car because it was scared. Lucy had to be careful. She had to act very gently and very soft because if she made sudden movements, the cat would become more scared, and that would be a worse problem. So she had to be very soft and careful. Come on, kitty, come out from under the car. She had to coax the cat from under the car. It's like a soft convincing, a soft persuasion. Come on, come over here. Come to the car. Come out from under the car. Not go to the car. Come out from under the car. Let's make a how question with this sentence. So the sentence is, she coaxed the cat from under the car. Make a how question with that. How did she coax? How did she coax the cat? How did she coax the cat from under? How did she coax the cat from under the car? How did she coax the cat from under the car? Let's answer with the preposition by plus an ing verb. By tempting it. By tempting it. Here's some fish. By tempting it with some fish. Come get the fish. Come on. Come under the car. So that's what coaxing is. Come on. See the fish? Come and get the fish. Come on. That's coaxing. She coaxed the cat from under the car by tempting it. By tempting it with some fish. She coaxed the cat from under the car by tempting it with some fish. Let's try another example. Little Johnny was very angry and unhappy, and this bothered his mother, who wanted him to be happy. She slowly convinced him to smile and laugh. At first he resisted, but over several minutes she was successful. But it was a slow, careful process. She coaxed a smile from him. So that wasn't, you, smile. That's, come on, smile. It's a very slow, soft process. This is coax. She coaxed a smile from him. From him. She coaxed a smile from him. She coaxed a smile from him. Let's make a how question. How? How did she coax? How did she coax a smile? How did she coax a smile from him? How did she coax a smile from him? How did she coax a smile from him? Let's answer this how question with the preposition by plus an ing verb. By making funny faces. Funny faces. Faces to make him laugh. By making funny faces and telling jokes. By making funny faces and telling jokes. She coaxed a smile from him. She coaxed a smile from him. She coaxed a smile from him by making funny faces and telling jokes. She coaxed a smile from him by making funny faces and telling jokes. All right. Let's move on. We just have two more words and then we're done for a while. Let's see. Let me turn. I have to find the... Oh, that's over here. Okay. Our next word is ecstatic. Ecstatic. That is a word that means extremely happy. And this is another vocabulary word that I've chosen from David Copperfield, chapter 5 by Charles Dickens. The word ecstatic is similar to happy, but it's much stronger. It is extreme happiness. Let's practice using it in a sentence. Mary became happy. Mary became happy. Let's change happy, which is kind of boring, to extremely happy, unbelievably happy, meaning, so let's use ecstatic. She became ecstatic. That, I think, for some reason, I think some people will have a hard time saying that word, ecstatic. I just want to spend a minute saying it with you. Ecstatic. Because for some reason, I just think it's hard for people. She became ecstatic. Ecstatic. Let's make a when question. When did she? When did she become? When did she become? When did she become ecstatic? Static. Static. When did she become ecstatic? And the answer is when she received a pay raise. When she received a. When she received a. When she received a. When she received a pay raise. She became ecstatic when she received a pay raise. Let's change some words. Let's use when she saw an old friend. She became ecstatic. She became ecstatic when she saw an old friend. She became ecstatic when she saw an old friend. Okay, now let's change another word. Let's say they. They became ecstatic. They became ecstatic when they became ecstatic when they saw an old friend. Saw an old friend. You know, there's that W in saw an old friend. There really is a U separating the saw and the N. So it's saw an old friend. They became ecstatic when they saw an old friend. They became ecstatic when they saw an old friend. Okay, let's change another word. Let's say won the lottery. Won the lottery. Where would you change? What would you change about that sentence with won the lottery? They became ecstatic after they saw, after they won the lottery. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery. Let's make a why question with that sentence. Why? Why did they become? Why did they become ecstatic? Why did they become ecstatic? Why did they become ecstatic after they won the lottery? Why did they become ecstatic after they won the lottery? And here's the answer. Because they paid all of their bills. They paid all of their bills. So let's try to make a really long sentence with all that information. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery because they paid all of their bills. Can you say all of that together in one sentence or in one breath? They became ecstatic. They became ecstatic after they won. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery because they paid. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery because they paid all of their bills. All of their bills. They paid all of their bills. They became ecstatic after they won the lottery because they paid all of their bills. All right. This is the final one for today, or for right now. I might do more today. I don't know. But I have to make it. I have to prepare it. To doze off. A very handy phrasal verb. This is a phrasal verb that I selected from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And doze off is similar to go to sleep or to fall asleep. But the difference is when you doze off, it's unintentional. You didn't plan for it. It was an accident. So a lot of times it happens in situations when you're not supposed to sleep. Let's try an example. So Mike was trying to listen to a lecture in his class, but it was very boring and he started falling asleep. So you ever have that situation, you're a little bit tired anyway, and you're in class or at work or maybe even driving, that's happened to me, and you start to do this? That's dozing off. And especially if you suddenly fall asleep, that's dozing off. So it's like an unintentional, accidental going to sleep. Usually when you don't want to, but not always. I'll show you an example in a minute where it's the opposite. But for right now, let's start with that. So you can picture Mike in class. He's trying to listen, trying to pay attention, trying to learn, and he's doing this. Huh? That's dozing off. All right, so let's say he dozed off. Now we can picture that whole scene, what's happening to him. He dozed off during the class. He dozed off. He dozed off. He dozed off during the class. Let's make a why question with that sentence. Why did he doze off? Why did he doze off? Why did he doze off during class? Why did he doze off during class? And the answer is because the lecture was boring. He dozed off during class because the lecture was boring. He dozed off during class because the lecture was boring. He dozed off during class because the lecture was boring. All right, let's do one more example. Now, here's the situation. Mary was flying in an airplane from Los Angeles to London, and it was a long flight, and she was very uncomfortable. Maybe the seats were cramped. So she couldn't sleep. I have that problem on airplanes. I can't sleep. They're very uncomfortable. But at some point, it happened by accident. She wasn't trying anymore. You know, you ever do that? You're on the plane. Oh, this is horrible. I'm so uncomfortable. But after you stop trying and you start watching a movie or reading a book, and suddenly it just happens by accident. You're not trying anymore. So we can say she dozed off during the flight. She wasn't intending to go to sleep anymore. She gave up, but she dozed off during the flight. Let's make a when question with that sentence. When did she doze off? When did she doze off during the flight? And here's the answer. After she started reading a book. So first she's trying, oh, I'm trying to sleep. And then she says, oh, forget it. This is too uncomfortable. So she starts to read a book. And as she's reading the book, it starts happening. So she dozed off during the flight after she started reading a book. She dozed off during the flight after she started reading a book. Reading a book. She dozed off during the flight after she started reading a book. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed these 16 vocabulary words that I lifted from Chapter 5 of David Copperfield. Thank you for watching. I had a couple people watching the entire time. That's great. And I think later on tonight I will be reading Chapter 6. So it won't just be me reading the book. I stop and talk about the meaning of it. Sometimes the sentences are very complicated, and I explain them, and we talk about the meaning of the sentences. So it's not just me reading the book, but more like reading and explaining the ideas in the book. And then later on, I take some of those words and make these exercises. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you watch again, and I will be cutting these up into little exercises and putting them on my channel. And I'll see you later. Goodbye.